So what we have here is a 94 Nissan Hardbody pickup, two-wheel drive, and just doing a little bit of work on it. I'm not going to show all the work, but just to get an idea, the belt needs to be tightened so it's squeaking. As you know, like if you turn the air conditioner on, it squeaks like really loud. So first thing to do is just tighten the belts. Obviously, if there's other issues, you can kind of troubleshoot that, but we had a problem here with the check engine light on, and as well as the belt squeaking, and so this hose here was rubbing on the belt, and now there's a hole in it. So follow that back, and it basically goes to this like charcoal fuel system. I don't know what it's called, but anyways, I have a feeling that's what's basically, I think it sends unburnt fuel back to the system, and it's good for the economy. So you can see some of these hoses are a little frayed, but there might be enough slack here so I can just splice this and tape it together for now until I can get another hose. But essentially here I'll take off this hose here for the air filter so you can get to the two serpentine belts, and really all it is just tightening. So the old school way, at least what I was taught, was if this is loose. So we have a tensioner here, which these foreign vehicles are pretty nice. You don't have to pry it and then tighten it down. You just loosen this tensioner bolt, and then you screw this tight, and it pulls the belt out. And then the other one is a little bit lower. You can kind of see it goes to the AC system, and we'll just tighten both of them.
Yeah.
All right. So you can see I took.
You don't expect her to do it though.
Mike.
Yeah.
Mike. So I took the little tube off for the air filter, right? So you have more space. Okay. Now you can see a little bit better. You had to pop these off, move it away. Typically the tensioner, right? So for the other belt is here. You can see it goes to the alternator. So right here and right here. You loosen both of those, and there's one more bolt that you have to loosen lower on the alternator, and that'll allow you to pull tension on this belt as well. So you can pull tension on both, but you have to loosen, especially for the alternator one, there's a lower bolt all the way down. I can't show it on the video. You got to loosen that bolt to allow the alternator to swivel. So instead of cutting this tubing here, since it's still intact, I'm just going to use a piece of plastic to go over it till we can get new tubing, and then wrap it in electrical tape, and then that way there's a pathway for that exhaust or fumes or whatever to travel, and it should release the check engine light. If check engine light's still on one of these old vehicles, what you can do is you can basically disconnect the battery and touch the two terminals together. Right, take them off the battery, touch them together for 20-30 seconds. It should reset the computer. But again, these older ones, I'm not sure this old if you can do that, if it resets it or not. But the module is actually underneath the seat on the passenger side. So last time we had to take the seat off, and there was the indicator there underneath. So to get to the lower bolt for the alternator, you just got this mud guard or whatever they call it. So you take off these. There's 3 here, and then these screws back here. Take that off, and then you'll have access to the alternator. I'll show you. All right, so I didn't take off all the bolts. I think I can just let this hang down, and you can see the alternator here. You can see the belt going to the alternator, and this lower bolt here is the one you have to loosen. So if you have to replace the alternator, you have to loosen that. Obviously you have to pull that off. If you're just replacing the belt, you loosen that and then the tensioner portion of it is up top. So if you're just changing the belt, and you can kind of see there's a lot of give. So you just tighten that up. You don't want it super tight, but you just tighten it up a little bit. Well, it's a 14 millimeter, so most foreign vehicles, especially the older ones, they're all metric. I like it. This was on pretty tight. So what I like doing is, for leverage, you can actually hook up another wrench, and that provides leverage for you to be able to loosen, right? So since we're not taking it off, you just loosen a little bit, and then that's good enough. So both of these up top, okay, the one below is 14 millimeter. These ones up top are 12. So you want to loosen this one first, and then once you loosen that one, you can tighten or loosen this depending on what you need to do. Obviously, if you loosen it to pull the belt off, here we want to tighten it. Sometimes when you do change the actual belt, you can kind of see this gap here. That gap there, you can kind of get an idea where it is, so that when you do when you go to put a new belt back on, you have an idea of where this is. So if you're ever confused, right? So I loosen this one, I loosen this one here, and you can actually twist it by hand, but that's loosening it, right? And you can kind of see the it's hard to tell, but you can kind of see it moving. So we want to tighten it, and you can actually see there's actually a line there of clean. That's where it was. So we want to tighten it past that. There's a little bit of room left. You shouldn't need too much. So I'm loosening it right now. We don't want to loosen it. We want to tighten it. So you can loosen it when you go to replace it by hand, and then you can actually move the alternator. It's kind of hard to see, but the alternator will move so that when you go to replace the belt, you just move it by hand. So all I'm doing here is tightening it. And you can kind of see there's clean bolt or whatever, where the kind of the line is. When we get back to that line, that's where it originally was. Right about there. And then we'll just go a couple turns more. And usually what I do is I just check it. So I'll do that, and then I just push on the belt down there. You can see my hand, it's a little blurry. Tighten it some more. And as you get tighter, obviously it's going to be a little bit harder to turn. That's okay. So there we go, that one's tightened. And then I got to go down and tighten below. Don't forget that. One thing about some trucks like old Toyotas I did some work on for a friend, it doesn't have this tensioner here, bolt. You have to actually pry it. So I had to actually pry it and hold pressure prying the alternator out, and then have somebody tighten it. So you might have to have two people for that. It's kind of hard to do it by yourself. But these ones are nice because you just turn the bolt and tighten it however you want. So I replaced the oil pan gasket, right? And you notice obviously underneath here you can see how it's wet. That's how it was before I replaced the oil pan gasket. Well, now you just come back to these bolts, and 10 millimeter, just tightening all these bolts a little bit, see if that'll fix the leak. I mean, it should have already fixed, but they say with old vehicles, you truly don't fix the, leave the old oil pan gasket on. Like I have a 71 Buick. But just go around. I have 10 millimeters, pretty easy. It's wet here in the front and towards the back. On this side, it's not. So not a big deal, but I tightened these ones down. A couple of them are pretty loose. So if you don't want to tighten them too much, because they're 10 millimeter, they'll break, and then you have to pull it off and have a screw remover or whatever, bolt remover. So you don't want to crank those down. So with this upper tensioner, right, 14 millimeter here, loosen it just enough. Obviously it was the wrong way. Loosen it, and then same thing here. It's actually easier if you get a socket, but you just tighten it. Tightening the bolt will send the this mechanism down, which brings the tensioner out. And there you go. I have to correct myself. So tightening it still tightens the belt, but it actually brings this mechanism up, not down. So that this little mechanism is tied to the pulley, and it just brings it up, which tightens it. So there you have it. I think typically with the squeaking, it's tied to the AC compressor down there, which is the one that I showed earlier with the alternator. And usually it squeaks more when you turn the AC on in the summertime. It squeals a lot more. So, and that one's tied to the AC compressor for your air conditioning. But I tightened this one too. I mean, after new belts, they may stretch out a little bit. So this is just a good time to check other fluids. I noticed power steering here is a little bit low, so nothing on the dipstick, so we got to add some power steering fluid. And then I checked the coolant's good, brake fluid. And again, these old vehicles, a lot of these hoses will leak, so you'll lose brake fluid, you'll lose power steering. You have to change those over time. All right, there you have it. I've done a lot of other work on this truck, and there's some couple good videos out there on the hard bodies. So these old vehicles are just pretty awesome to work with, especially the foreign ones. Everything's so easy to access. I've already done distributor wires, spark plugs, all that. So cool. Thanks.